In this video, I want to have a look at algebraic fractions. So let's start off looking at how to simplify algebraic fractions. So we'll have a look at a few examples. Our first one is 5a minus b over 2b minus 10a. Right, so the first thing you always want to look at when you're trying to simplify algebraic fractions is to see whether you can factorize either the numerator or the denominator or both. So that top one, there's no common factors, it's not two difference of two squares or anything like that, so we can't factorize the top, but we can factorize the denominator because they have that common factor of 2. You've got to be able to look ahead a little bit in these ones and see that if we took that 2 out, we'd be left with a b minus 5a, which is really similar to what's up the top, except our negatives are around the wrong way. So instead of pulling out a 2 as a common factor, we're going to pull out negative 2 as a common factor. So that would leave us with minus b plus 5a. So now that minus b plus 5a, that's the same as what's in our numerator. So that means that we can cancel out those, so they divide through to give 1, and we'll end up with 1 over minus 2. Or you could write that as minus a half as our final answer. Alright, our second example is x squared minus 5x plus 6 over x minus 2. Again, we want to factorize if we can, so we're going to factorize the numerator there. It's a quadratic, so it will factorize to, it'll factorize to minus 2 and minus 3. So x minus 2 and x minus 3 will give us x squared minus 5x plus 6, and that's all over x minus 2. And then we can cancel out these two terms here, and we'll just be left with x minus 3. All right, one last example of simplifying. So we've got x squared minus x over x squared minus 1. So that numerator, we've got a common factor of x that we can pull out. So we'll have x outside of x minus 1. And the denominator, that's the difference of two squares, so we'll have x plus 1, x minus 1. Again, so those two terms can cancel each other out, and we'll just be left with x over x plus 1. All right, so that's simplifying. Now I want to have a look at adding and subtracting. When we're adding and subtracting fractions, it's really important to remember that we can only add or subtract if our fractions have a common denominator. And if that's not true, we need to make them have a common denominator before we can add or subtract. So our first example that we've got is 2m minus n over 3 minus m minus 3n over 6. So they don't have a common denominator, so we need to manipulate it so that they do. The lowest common factor of 3 and 6, lowest common multiple of 3 and 6 is 6. So to make this one have a denominator of 6, we'd have to multiply by 2, which means we need to multiply the top by 2 as well. So what we're going to end up with is 2 outside of 2m minus n over 6 minus m minus 3n over 6. So now we can add and subtract. So let's expand this one out as we go. So 2 times 2m would be 4m, and then 2 times minus n would be minus 2n. And while we're at it, let's expand this out. So that negative there is affecting the m and the 3n. So it would be minus m plus 3n all over 6. Then we can collect back terms. So 4m minus m would be 3m, and minus 2n plus 3n would be plus n over 6. Okay, so that's our first example. Let's have a look at a second. Our second example is 2 over x minus 3 over x squared plus 2x. So the first thing we want to do is factorize this denominator to make it look a little bit nicer. So we're going to have 2 over x minus 3 over, and we can pull out that common factor of x outside of x plus 2. All right, so now we can look at our denominators, and we need to find the lowest common multiple. So we can turn this denominator of the first fraction into an x outside of x plus 2 if we multiply it by that x plus 2 that's in brackets there. And if we do that to the bottom, we have to do the same thing to the top. So we're going to have 2 outside of x plus 2 over x outside of x plus 2 minus 3 over x outside of x plus 2. Right, so now that they both have the common denominator, now we can add them together. Let's expand this bracket out as we go as well. So 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 2 is 4, and then we've got that minus 3, all over x outside of x plus 2. And then we can simplify this a little bit. 4 minus 3 gives us 1, so we've got 2x plus 1 over x outside of x plus 2. Right, so that's adding and subtracting. Now let's have a look at multiplying and dividing. When we're multiplying and dividing algebraic fractions, we're going to multiply the numerators together and multiply the denominators together. But before we do that, it's going to make it a lot easier if we can simplify down first. So we want to go through and factorize anything if we can, and then we want to simplify down. So we're going to have 2x over this one here, that x squared minus 9, that's the difference of two squares. So we can factorize that to x plus 3, x minus 3 times, and then we've got, there's nothing on this side that can factorize, so x minus 3 over 5x. So now we need to look and see what we can cancel. So we can cancel anything on the top with anything on the bottom. So for example, this x here and that x there, we can cancel those out. And this x minus 3 and that x minus 3 there, we can cancel those out as well. So they divide through to give 1 all over the place. All right, so now we can multiply now that we've simplified it as much as we can. So what we've got left is 2 times 1, so it's just going to be a 2 on the top. And in the denominator, we've got an x plus 3 and a 5. So we're going to have 5 outside of x plus 3. All right, our second example, we've got 3 over a minus 2 divided by a plus 3 over a squared minus 4. Okay, so again, we want to factorize if we can. So that a squared minus 4, that's the difference of two squares. So we'll go 3 over a minus 2 divided by a plus 3 over a plus 2, plus 2, a minus 2. Okay, so we can't cancel anything yet because we're not multiplying yet. So when we divide by a fraction, what we do instead is we multiply by the reciprocal, which means we flip this second fraction upside down. So we're going to have 3 over a minus 2 times a plus 2, a minus 2 over a plus 3. So now we can cancel if there's anything that cancels on top and bottom. So this a minus 2 up the top here, that can cancel with this a minus 2 down the bottom. So then if we multiply across, we're going to have 3 times a plus 2. A plus 2. And in the denominator, we've just got an a plus 3 there. Alright, so that's a fair few examples of how to simplify, add, subtract, multiply, and divide algebraic fractions.